There's nothing more poisonous to authentic eusebia or piety than the misunderstanding of the Roman legal phrase do ut des, which freely translates into I give so that you may give. Essentially, this legal doctrine was used in informal reciprocal agreements, where a person would transfer ownership of a thing on the condition that the other person will transfer ownership of some other thing in return. These are understood as basic informal contracts. This perhaps dry, legalistic doctrine recalls aspects of my younger years studying Roman law and Justinian's 12 Tables in a lecture hall at the University of Edinburgh under Professor Duplessis. The building was situated directly across from the medical school, where the infamous William Burke and William Hare sold recently dug up corpses and sold them to Robert Knox, the anatomist, across the street. Apparently, we were told by the professor, that the two body snatchers, who would later inspire Robert Louis Stevenson's short story of the same name, occasionally stored the fresh corpses, how fresh exactly is an interesting question, somewhere in this exact same lecture hall where we found ourselves sitting. It was in this dank, somewhat drafty room that I felt the equal chill from the severe, cold, and rather unfeeling legalistic prose that is Roman law. It certainly gave me the impression of antiquated customs and laws masking the vibrant color, emotional life, and sensuousness of the ancient world. Unfortunately, the do ut des transactional legalistic framework has often been applied to the relation between a worshipper and their god, making it seem as though the god or goddess somehow need or are dependent upon the sacrifice given by the worshipper, or the object that is dedicated to them, as if the gods truly need anything at all and are not self-sufficient. The violence in this misunderstanding also continues with the notion that somehow the gods can be bribed with pretty little trinkets. And to make matters worse, they reduce the true fact that the worshipper approaches the gods not through some contractual basis, whereby we can say, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, but rather through a submission to the superiority of the divine individual to whom these gifts are given. What is incredibly misunderstood is that a gift exchange is not centered around the objects that are given in the transactional sense, but literally in the act of giving itself, which is concerned with what we call charis. Charis can mean many different things, like grace or eloquence or charm or beauty, but it can also mean a gift or a benefit or a favor. What is necessary to understand is that when a worshipper provides a gift to a specific deity, it is intended, by its beauty, to delight and to please the god. The god does not really need it or require the gift, but even in the mortal realm, most gifts are not really needed or required or even expected, for that would destroy the gift itself. Gifts always come spontaneously and without an indebtedness associated with it, where you'd have to pay back the gift immediately. There may arise certain obligations, for example. The notion of xenia or hospitality is also one that is provided from one person or family to another, with the expectation that perhaps down the road, if opportunities or life circumstances dictate, that favor once granted would be called upon in a gesture of reciprocity. But this is not to be confused with a tit-for-tat exchange, let alone bribery or manipulation. Once again, charis is literally present in these types of reciprocal exchange of favors and pleasing gifts. Charis is not only a theoretical or abstract notion, but actually possesses a certain physical presence. When Odysseus washes up on the shores of Scheria, after much travail and hardship, Athena makes sure that the princess of the Phaeacians, the young Nausicaa, discovers him and gently falls in love with this handsome stranger. But this handsomeness is literally, quote, poured on top of the bedraggled Odysseus, like some divine fluid, making him look, quote, bigger and fuller in appearance, and sent his hair falling thick and curly from his head like flowers of hyacinth, as when a skilled man, whom Hephaestus and Pallas Athena have taught all kinds of craft, pours gold onto silver in the creation of pleasing works, so did she pour beauty on his head and shoulders. As Shakespeare notes in On Beauty and the Gods, quote, Pouring Charis on Odysseus, therefore, is both an act of beautification and a blessing, as the terminology of Charis implies. Athena pours beauty, Charis, on Odysseus as a favor, or Charis, to him, her favorite hero. His beauty mirrors and materializes the divine favor he enjoys. Again, we can see that Charis is reflected and manifested not only as physical beauty, or perhaps in other contexts as eloquence, but also demonstrates the deep relationship between the hero and his divine patroness. Charis is a Greek ideal, and it is the invisible substance that permeates and unites the fabric of culture and society. But as we can see, Charis is also present in myth and taken later into philosophy, which discloses to us its importance with respect to theology and religious practice, fundamentally with regard to our relations with the gods. In fact, this notion of Charis also applies to theurgy, with the understanding that Charis, as divine grace, flows outward into the manifested cosmos, down into the human realm, where it meets and inflames the desire or eros in the human soul and mingles with it, such that it forms a catalyst for reciprocity and mutual exchange as the worshipper develops and deepens their relationship with the god or goddess and approximates their movements in ever-refined revolutions around the god's center. There are 3 Charites, considered as minor goddesses of the Hellenic pantheon. Sometimes they are named as Aglaea, Thalia, and Euphrosyne. It is a shame that they are understood as minor, since, as we've discussed, their presence innervates all social bonds of reciprocity and gift exchange. Not only the pleasure and delight associated with the giving of a gift, but also in receiving one, and the pleasure in reciprocating by giving the giver a gift in turn. The Roman philosopher Seneca, in his work entitled On Benefits, analyzes the 3 Charites in reference to their iconography as follows, quote, "Some people advance the view that one of them stands for giving a benefit, one for receiving it, and one for returning it. Others hold that they represent 3 kinds of benefactors: those who confer benefits, those who return them, and those who accept benefits and return them at the same time. But no matter which of these interpretations you decide is true, what good does this specialized knowledge do for us? And what about the fact the group dances in a circle with intertwined hands? It is because a gift, or benefit, goes through an orderly sequence, passing from hand to hand and yet returning to the giver, and loses its integral character if that sequence is at any point broken, being most beautiful if the continuity is maintained. In the dance, though, the older sister has a greater value, like those who confer benefits. The Graces have joyful expressions, just as those who give and receive benefits generally do. They are youthful, because the remembrance of benefits should not grow old. They are virginal, because benefits are unspoiled, pure, and revered by all. Benefits should not be constrained or obligated. That is why the Graces wear loose robes, and the robes are translucent, because benefits want to be in full view. As the Roman Seneca illustrates here, nothing can be further from reality than our misinterpretation and misapplication of the legal phrase do ut des, I give so that you may give. As Seneca says, the Charites are depicted as beautiful because the remembrance of benefits should not grow old. It is to be continually remembered and maintained, these bonds that unite us both with one another and unite us with the gods. They are virginal because benefits are unspoiled, pure, and revered by all, so they are not to be used to manipulate others or the gods. There is no constraint or imposition of obligation. They are freely given in a gesture of generosity, and hence their robes are not constraining to the surface of their bodies. They flow and hover gently, coming in and out according to the gentle breezes and sometimes tumultuous winds of life and circumstance. The final line in Seneca's passage is that the robes are translucent because benefits want to be in full view. To me, this signifies that Charis is closely linked not only to aesthetic beauty, but to appearance itself in all phenomenality that emerge from the cosmos. The word cosmos itself refers to an order, but that order or arrangement also simultaneously evokes a sense of beauty that emerges from that particular arrangement and its orderliness and its fittedness. But what is important for our understanding of Charis is that this beauty, which overlaps with the notion of the beauty of a cosmos, is that it also reveals an overabundance of the rich potential networks of reciprocity and relationality that are available to us. The entire cosmos and its phenomenal reality is given to us at every moment, providing us with an opportunity to connect and exchange, an inexhaustible proliferation of transfers of favors, beauty, gifts, and grace that flood our waking existence. It is endless. The cosmos itself and all the parts and wholes that relate with one another in this fabric of well-fitted being is like a manifold of ornaments that further serves to please the gods. This variety of ornamentation is described using the word poikilos, which we've encountered before in previous videos, which is variability or a shimmering quality, sometimes translated as intricately adorned when referring to crafted objects like mosaics or shields or jewelry, whose multiform nature and diversity of expression reflect those of a daidalon, or a work of expert craft. It is perhaps for this very reason that Hephaestus, the god of techne and metallurgy, crafts beautiful objects that are rich in charis, charienta erga, pleasing works, but is always wedded to goddesses exemplifying profound beauty, Aphrodite in the Odyssey, Aglaea and Charis in the Theogony and the Iliad. Something that is crafted, just like the cosmos, is already rich in grace and beauty, and to bring that grace into the world of human relations once again, as difficult as it sometimes may be in these dark times, is a work toward an ideal that mirrors and reflects the manner in which the gods themselves engage with one another. Not by needing anything from one another, since they are all fundamentally autarkic, but in the pleasure that is evoked in the act of giving itself and receiving itself. I've been on this platform for 6 years now, and I've given the work of countless hours to the service of all those who seek to honor the gods. No matter which pantheon one feels particularly moved by, even if it's multiple deities across diverse pantheons, I conceive of each and every video not only as a gift to you all, but a gift and honor to the gods themselves. And I will continue to do so. These are, after all, my own charienta erga. Many of you have donated to this channel, and I'm grateful for you all. Your support has continually inspired me, oftentimes occurring at those moments of frustration and sense of loneliness that periodically arise. A fleeting moment of frustration, nullified by a donation or even an encouraging comment on the channel. Those comments and exchanges of charis really do mean a lot to me. For this entire endeavor is more than a quid pro quo. It is a common service, or a therapeia, that seeks to cure and heal the modern malaise that poisons us all. I will continue to hold myself to the task of making a video every month or so, if time permits. But as the years have progressed and videos have mounted on top of more videos, I think a new phase of the channel is ready to be unveiled. The time is ripe. There is much interest out there, and so much content on the ancient world and all sorts of polytheistic revivals have proliferated online, that along with the explosion of interest, emerges the old attendant dangers of centuries of misunderstandings and monotheistic mischaracterizations, as well as regrettable 19th century excesses with regard to the appropriations and weaponizations of the ancient religious worldview that crops up again and again. The dangers of delving into and uncovering the ancient world are the manifest historical ideologies that have permeated and continue to influence, to this very day, false or misleading understandings of ancient cultures and religious experience. Many of these ideologies aiming to appropriate deep piety for the gods and channeling those same energies to their own political purposes. The people I seek for this channel have always been those who want to dig a little deeper, not out of pure speculation or a passing intellectual curiosity or fancy, but those individuals inspired by true, authentic, burning eros and reverence for the gods. I do not intend to sit here on a judge's bench casting judgment on who is authentic and inauthentic in their beliefs. That is only up to you and the god or the gods you follow and serve. I've recently opened up this channel for membership subscriptions. Hopefully I will get a modest group of you to join. The aim is to keep it rather affordable. We are considering subscriptions less than a monthly Netflix fee. After all, how many times can you watch the same banal TV shows and movies using the money you earn through your time and difficult labors? The aim of this community is to reject passive entertainment and to seek out spiritual enrichment, which isn't to say that we can't make it entertaining, adhering to Cicero's insistence that the order engage in the triad of docere, delectare, movere, to teach, to delight, and to move or persuade. These membership tiers are not courses to be sold or merely some goods to be exchanged. Knowledge for payment, for instance. Such a view would collapse back into the nihilistic modern mindset. This channel is meant to uphold the ideal of Charis, a reciprocal gesture of favors, ultimately grounded in the experience and feelings of delight and pleasure in both giving and receiving, just as the mutual recognition and philia of the gods grounds all relationships. I hope to maintain a small community of you, and I hope you will join me as we build common partnerships, learning and exploring the gods and their divine powers, while simultaneously providing them with due honors. There will be 3 membership tiers structured around the architectural blueprint of a Greek temple. Moving from the periphery to the center, we have the temenos level, marking the entry into the sacred domain. At this basic level, you will all receive an additional video every month. I should note that each video will be unique for members. I will not be replicating the effort and only supplying early videos to be later released to the broader audience. This is intentional. Each video will also begin with a brief hymn or invocation to a god or goddess, or a Neoplatonic prayer. The topics will either be continuations of public-facing videos, perhaps going into more depth, or will cover a specific scholarly article of interest in either theurgy or alchemy. Sometimes we will discuss book recommendations or stories related both to Hellenic culture and modern culture's creative reception of the ancient world through a literary or artistic lens. We will also look at aesthetics and analyze poetry as we discuss theology and metaphysics. There are also certain theurgic practices and other devotional practices that I simply would not feel comfortable simply putting out into the ether for all and sundry. These tend to be private, and I have no interest in broadcasting them to the masses. I believe there's a certain exclusivity warranted in such matters. The next tier is the cella, or naos, typically an inner main room housing the main statue of the deity. These members will have priority status regarding questions. I'll aim to answer as many questions as time permits, but I'll be sure to answer these questions first. The last tier is the aditon. In this third tier, we find ourselves within the innermost sanctum of the temple, typically the exclusive domain of the priests. While I'm not a Hellenic priest, I sometimes wince at times at those who claim confidently that they are. In this tier, each of the other tiers' perks will be carried over fully, but I will grant a special poll or maintain contact with these individuals who want to steer the topics or videos in particular directions. This isn't to say that I'll not have final say in what will be created, but final tier members will work collaboratively with me in setting the schedule and the direction of topics of interest. I'm always curious to know what people yearn to learn more about. Of course, if you'd like to join the higher tier simply because you'd like to contribute more to the channel without the expectation of having to contribute ideas, that's also perfectly fine with me, and there's no pressure to engage more proactively. I fully understand that the economic situation is precarious and has been increasingly getting more difficult for a vast majority of people, which is why, as I've said before, I wish to maintain my current upload schedule for the public-facing videos. To the great many viewers and listeners who've subscribed to this channel, I send my endless gratitude and appreciation. Whether you decide to join me or not, it's a great delight to have you all here. For my intent is not to sell you something, since the spirit of this channel is not confined to some legalistic do ut des, but rather the Greek ideal of Charis, and an honoring of those goddesses who pervade, facilitate, and exalt in these exchanges. So join me as we pour gold onto silver, and rejoice in the feeling of awe as we stand before the majesty, grandeur, and beauty of the cosmos, becoming truly human once again. Take care for now.